Chapter 14. Prevailing over Distress.
Open your eyes. Open your eyes. Open your eyes.
White. That was all he could see. Before that. What was before that? Darkness? Why was it suddenly so bright?
Open your eyes.
A voice. It was sweet, soothing, and familiar? It was strange. The voice was hard to hear at first, but now it was clear, even though all his other senses were dull. Was something filling his ears? It was a little cold, almost like water? What was happening? Finally, the white light began to dim, its color changing to a shade of blue. Everything was fuzzy, but as the voice continued to echo in his mind, calling out for him to open his eyes, a request he obeyed without question, his vision cleared.
Open your eyes.
The frigid water around his body was lowering, its touch replaced with the similarly chilly air of the room. Except for his back. Was he lying on something? Whatever it was hard and rough like stone.
Wake up, Link.
Link? Who was that? Was that him? Finally, all the water had drained and his vision had returned. He was lying in a strange stone-carved pit with a large light shining above him, enclosed in a bulbous casing of the same stony material. Everything had carvings, all depicting intricate swirls with the occasional light dotting their surfaces, these ones orange in color. He looked to the left, and then to the right. No one was there, leaving him completely alone in the room. So, where had the voice come from then? With a grunt, he sat up and looked around again, ensuring he was really alone. The room was the same as the strange bed he was in, circular with dark stone walls covered in tan swirls and lights. It was dark, with no light other than the bulbous artifact hanging above him. He still couldn't see anyone. Unsure of what else to do, he climbed out of the bed and placed the soles of his feet onto the stone ground. His body was bare to the air, for he wasn't wearing anything other than a pair of dark undergarments. Drops of water fell from his body, their splashes echoing through the room as they hit the floor. He took a few steps forward, and while he felt a little groggy, at least he was able to walk straight. Taking another large look around the room, he noticed there was a strange door in front of him, but no handle to take. That was odd, but something else caught his eye. It was a cylinder structure sticking out of the ground next to the door, with its top, slanted surface covered in blue lights. Unsure of what else to do, Link walked toward the device. The moment he got close enough, the front lifted up and spun slightly before a rectangular piece of stone stuck straight up from it. The stone texture was dark in color with similarly tan swirls on its sides and an eye and teardrop insignia on its back. It even had the same dotted orange lights around the body. Strangely though, its front was smooth and shiny. Suddenly, the voice from before spoke up.
That is a shaker slate. Take it. It will help guide you after your long slumber.
Long slumber? How long had he been asleep for? Stepping forward, Link took the slate into his hands and the shiny part brightened, giving off a dim blue glow with the same eye and teardrop insignia. He was sure he had never seen whatever this little device was, and yet there was something familiar about it. Upon taking the device from its pedestal, the strange door in the room opened. It was made from multiple rectangular stone pillars, all of which raised up at different times until eventually the doorway was clear. Stepping through the door, he entered another room, one that was a little thinner and longer than the one he had woken up in. This room was filled with crates and barrels, all old and falling apart, some more so than the others. Alongside those were a couple of chests, each made from stone. Curious, Link pushed the heavy lids of the chests open, finding both a shirt and an old pair of trousers. Both articles of clothing were a little too small, causing his ankles and wrists to be seen, but that was fine. It was better than being naked in such a cold room. The trousers even had a belt around them, which he used to put the slate onto his hip. After rummaging through the barrels and crates, he continued across the room where at the end, he found another sealed door that was similar in structure but much larger than the last one. This one also had a pedestal nearby, however, this one's surface lights were orange. Again, the voice from before spoke.
Hold the shaker slate up to the pedestal. That will show you the way.
Obeying the voice, Link held the slate up to the pedestal. In response, its lights flashed from orange to blue, and the rectangular pillars that made up the door began to rise, just like the one before. This time, instead of being introduced to another dark room behind it, he was met with a tall, deteriorated staircase where another blinding light was shining at the top. Shielding his eyes with his hand, Link stepped in front of the staircase and into the brightness. It felt warmer, more organic, different from the light he had awoken to.
Link, you are the light. Our light that must shine upon Hyrule once again. Now go!
The moment Link's eyes adjusted, he began walking up the steps, having to climb over some of the more deteriorated ones. Reaching the top, he stepped out into the open air, revealing a vast landscape with distant mountains, open plains, a volcano, and even a castle shrouded in shadow. For a bit, Link simply stood over the cliffside, staring out into the wilderness he now found himself in, waiting for the voice's instructions, and yet, none came. There still wasn't anyone nearby. It was just him, alone in the wild. At least, that's what he had thought, until he looked down the natural path down the mountain, where he could see a small campfire burning and a person sitting in front of it. Was that the person who had spoken to him? Deciding there was only one way to find out, Link traveled down the path, watching as lizards scurried out of his way, only stopping when he was in front of the person's camp. It was a large individual, draped in dark clothing with a large hood that covered a majority of their face. Despite the covers, a large white beard could be seen, and the parts of skin visible were a tad wrinkly. This was a man, a large one, and an older one at that. The voice Link had heard earlier was surely a young woman's. The man didn't respond to Link's presence. He simply sat, watching the fire burn in front of him, leaning against a large staff with a lantern hanging from the top. Upon closer inspection, Link noticed there were apples sitting near the fire's base, their red skin darkening the longer they sat near the flame's heat. His stomach rumbled. How long had he sat since he had eaten anything? Again, Link looked at the old man's features. He still couldn't see his face, nor had the old man acknowledged him. Was he being ignored? Was the man sleeping? Link's mouth began to water. Would the man notice one apple missing? Unable to contain his urges, he bent down and took one of the baked apples.
I beg your pardon!
Flinching at the sudden yell, Link fumbled and dropped the apple.
I do believe that is my baked apple. You can't just go about taking whatever you please.
Link stood in place, unsure of what to do. Should he run? Take the apple regardless? Apologize? Thankfully, the old man began to laugh before a decision had to be made.
Forgive me. I could not resist pulling your leg. Please, help yourself. An apple in an open flame make a succulent treat.
Though he hesitated for a second, Link bent back down and picked up the apple he had dropped. Raising it up to his lips, he took a bite, allowing the apple's juices to flow down his tongue. It was delicious. How long had it been since he had eaten anything? Watching Link scarf down the apple, the old man laughed again.
A hungry fellow, I see. No need to force it down. There's plenty more apples over the fire that I'm happy to share. And if this isn't enough, there's many more that can be picked from the forest below.
He gestured toward the ground, a sign Link took to sit. When he did, the old man continued.
I will say, it's a bit strange to see another soul in these parts.
Where's here?
Link asked with his cheeks full of food, but he coughed. His voice was hoarse, as if it hadn't been used in some time.
And who are you?
Me? I'll spare you my life story. I'm just an old fool who has lived here alone for quite some time now. As for where here is, this is the Great Plateau. According to legend, this is the birthplace of the entire kingdom of Hyrule.
Link swallowed and placed the remaining fruit's core in the grass, only to reach for another apple.
Hyrule?
The old man raised an eyebrow, supposedly finding such a curious tone interesting. To Link's surprise, the man stood, using his walking stick to help him up. Using his staff as help again, the old man pointed toward the large, deteriorated building nearby.
That temple there. Long ago, it was the site of many sacred ceremonies. Ever since the decline of the kingdom 100 years ago, it sat abandoned in a state of decay.
Closing his eyes, the old man lowered his head, placing his hands on top of his walking stick.
Yet another forgotten entity. A mere ghost of its former self.
Noticing the look on Link's face at such a non-answer, the old man chuckled.
What I mean to say is, what's been forgotten is of no importance, at least not at this moment.
Carefully, the old man sat back down, giving a deep, tired breath as he settled in the dirt in front of the fire.
For now, let us chat. I've done nothing but relax by the fireside, although I'll need to cook myself another baked apple at some point. Please, join me. Despite being here, you seem to have a lack of awareness. There are plenty of monsters on this plateau, so if you don't wish to meet a fool's end, I advise you take whatever advice this old man can offer you.
Link could remember that conversation with the old man as if it were yesterday. He stood near the campfire's remains, staring at the charred sticks and rotten apple remains, thinking back to how the elder had shown him where the best apple trees were, how torches or even sticks could be used as weapons, and even how shrines worked. Though he was a bit vague at times, the old man, the king, had guided him during the start of his journey, easing Link back into the world of the living while he hadn't a single memory to cling to. He was the reason Link was still standing, the reason Zelda was free from her self-imprisonment, and the reason Hyrule hadn't been burned to the ground.
I'll make sure she's kept safe, and hopefully, I can do for her what you did for me.
Looking up from the old campsite, he glanced up at the plateau's tower he had appeared on before moving his attention to the sun.
She couldn't have gotten that far. Knowing her, she probably went there first.
He traveled down the rest of the path, calmly passing along the outskirts of the forest, around the Temple of Time and its grounds, and across the plains, before finding Zelda exactly where he thought she'd be, her father's old cabin. Staying at a distance, he had found her just as she was heading inside the open doorway, apparently inspecting the interior to see if it would be suitable for the day and upcoming night. Honestly, it wasn't the worst decision. In fact, it was a great decision to use the cabin. There were many abandoned houses one could find and take shelter in along the roads of Hyrule. Finding shelter was the easiest part though, and the rest of the day wouldn't be much harder. Her actual trial, Link knew, wouldn't be until later that evening. He also knew he would be able to quickly determine how Zelda would fare by keeping an eye on her throughout the day. And so, from a distance, he observed. He watched as she searched through the old man's remaining barrels and crates in front of the cabin, her venture into the fields to pick mushrooms, and her expedition into the forest to climb trees for apples, something that made him slightly smile with pride. He remained at a distance and out of sight, watching from above as he leaned over cliff sides, sitting in the fields hidden by the grass, or behind the large tree trunks or logs in the forest. While all of this sounded intricate, it wasn't hard at all to keep hidden. In fact, he barely had to crouch or peek from behind the trunks. For most of his observation, all he had to do was simply stand straight, with his arms crossed as he watched her progress, taking care to move whenever she turned her head. Sure, it was still something only someone with his experience in stealth could accomplish, but it shouldn't have been that easy, and that was a problem. For how little effort he was putting in, Zelda should have spotted him by now.
She's too comfortable. She's not taking this seriously.
With a frown, he watched as Zelda threw her scavenged ingredients into her father's cooking pot before looking up at the sky, noticing the golden aura of twilight beginning to take over.
Tonight is going to shock her.
With a worried hum, he looked back down at the cabin, watching as Zelda got comfortable against the log in order to read her father's journal. Should he stop this now, knowing full well she had already failed? Shaking his head, he moved to take a step toward her.
If you stop her now, little progress will be made, Master.
Link stopped. It had come so suddenly and had been so quiet, he almost thought he had imagined it. Confused, he glanced back at the purple-winged sword on his back. Had the sword spoken to him? He continued to stare, but the voice didn't return. If the sword had anything to say, it clearly had nothing more to offer in advice. Exhaling with frustration, he looked back at Zelda, who was now eating the food he could smell she had somewhat burnt. Regardless of whether it was the sword's influence or his own imagination halting him, the reason was valid. If he put a stop to her trial before it even truly began, she would never understand. She would never learn. He had to do things right, meaning as much as he hated it, he had to let it play out. Soon the sun had completely set, and the embers of twilight vanished, leaving only the moon to illuminate the night. By this time, Zelda had long gone to sleep after doing a short surveillance of the house. Knowing she wouldn't be coming back out, Link moved closer before planting himself beside one of the birch trees near the cabin. Unbuckling the baldric, he removed the Master Sword from his back and leaned against the white tree bark, while resting his sword against his chest and shoulder. And from there, he waited, glancing up at the ever-rising white moon above. He knew they would arrive, and it wouldn't take long. From where he sat, he was close enough to save her when things inevitably went wrong. Even with the moon out, he could tell as he watched her scan the perimeter that she was still far too lax. So he waited, and waited, and waited, with his eyes closed, but his pointed ears twitching at the slightest sound of movement. Every now and then, one or two of the skeletal beasts would claw their way from the depths of the dirt, ready to tear Link's limbs from his body, and each and every time, Link would use the Master Sword to swipe them away, barely having to lean forward to deal with them. This was the Great Plateau after all. This place wasn't a threat at all if one was prepared and aware. Unfortunately for Zelda, neither were true. Link's eyes opened properly when he felt the ground shudder for the umpteenth time that night, noticing that this one was more aggressive than any before. A larger creature was rising from the depths, but this time it wasn't nearby. Glancing around, Link could see the tall skeleton that rose. It was the Stalmoblin stomping about, the rattling of its bones echoing through the night. It was searching for something, anything, to become its next victim, and it was right next to the old man's cabin. Link gripped the Master Sword's handle, watching as the skeleton pressed against the cabin's walls and peered inside through the gaps in the logs. Feeling doubtful, he made to move, and just like before, he was again halted, this time by the sound of a soft chiming.
Wait.
With the sword now in front of him, he noticed the faint glow of the handle, proving to him that he hadn't been hearing things. Though he stood from the grass, he gritted his teeth and watched the Stalmoblin continue to poke around the cabin. To think, the Master Sword, the blade thought to have been created by the goddess herself, had finally spoken up in order to demand he didn't immediately save the goddess's descendant.
Of all the times you want to speak up and tell me I'm making the right choice, it has to be now?
Though she hadn't audibly screamed, he could hear Zelda panicking and struggling inside the cabin between the Stalmoblin's roars. He watched as it realized there was an entrance and circled the building before trying to fit through the doorway. It was then his eyebrows lifted in surprise. The beast's bones had collapsed and clattered to the ground. Nervously, Link began tapping the top of his sword's pommel.
Come on, Zelda. You just have to finish it. Strike it in the skull. Don't relax so soon.
Unfortunately, Link could see the bones in the doorway starting to reform, taking the chance while separated to rebuild inside the cabin in order to get through the doorway. Had she not seen the skull still bouncing around? Finally, Zelda let out a proper scream. Link made to move again, and this time the Master Sword didn't stop him. Without even taking the slate off his hip, he reached down and tapped the screen a few times, and in a flash of blue, the Hylian shield appeared. In a burst of speed, he dashed forward and jumped through the doorway, dodging the skeletal arm that had been flung in his direction as he entered. Taking note of the 3 smaller skeletons, creatures he knew to be stalbokoblins, that had Zelda by the limbs, he sliced at each of their bodies and then their skulls. With them defeated, he faced the largest of the pack, and with little effort, had defeated the Stalmoblin in 3 simple swings. Replacing his weapons on his back, Link turned and crouched down to meet Zelda's eyes. They were teary and full of fear. Her body refused to stop shaking, so much so he wondered if she'd be able to stand anytime soon.
Link, you're here.
I never left. Are you alright?
It was a terrible feeling, watching Zelda sit in such a petrified state as she struggled to answer him. As Zelda took him by the collar and pulled him close, quietly demanding they return home, Link took her by the shoulders, holding her as she tried to collect herself.
I'm sorry, but this had to be done, as much as it kills me to watch. You have a big decision to make, Zelda. What are you going to do now?
Stay strong, just a little longer. Those were the words Zelda spoke to herself every passing moment as she kept her hand held high, the golden aura of the divine power of her holy ancestor emanating from her palm. The malicious entity, the calamity, demanded its freedom. It fought her, trying to overpower her with its corruption so it could break from her grasp. Malice spread throughout the air, its gunge collecting on her body as it tried to drown her, burning Zelda's eyes and throat, but she kept her arm strong, the 3 golden triangles on the back of her hand shining brighter than ever. As long as her power was there, offering guidance and what little warmth and comfort it could, she could keep Ganon contained. Zelda closed her eyes, gritting her teeth as she tried to ignore the ever-growing feeling of malice trying to consume her body. She had to push through. Link would come for her at any moment. Just a little longer. Regaining a little of her lost confidence, she opened her eyes again, ready to stare into the calamity's beady yellow eyes, but all she saw was darkness around her. The back of her hand had gone dull, the triangles no longer visible.
What? No. Come back. Please.
Suddenly, laughter she had heard once before while keeping the evil contained began to faintly echo again. The malice around her body tightened, searing her skin. If any tears had fallen down her body, they had burned away due to the heat.
Please, come back.
No response came. Only the laughter could be heard, growing louder as the heat grew more intense.
Don't leave me.
Falling to the ground, Zelda curled up into a ball, doing her best to shield herself from the malice.
Don't leave me all alone.
Quietly she wept as the malice consumed her, this time with no light to come to her aid.
Father.
Soon even the laughter faded, leaving Zelda completely alone in the darkness.
Link.
With a gasp, Zelda's eyes flung open, and again she was met with darkness. This was different though. Her skin and throat weren't burning. Her body, while still warm, felt comfortable and cozy as it laid pressed against something firm. Carefully, Zelda scooted back slightly to reveal the tunic she had buried her face in the night before.
Link.
She glanced up at his face to find him still sleeping, his arms still wrapped around her just as they had been when he had comforted her before she had fallen asleep. With a sigh, she closed her eyes and leaned back into his chest. He had stayed like this the entire night, just for her.
Thank you.
Link didn't respond, his chest continuing to slowly rise and fall under her cheek. After a few moments to consciously enjoy his embrace, she slightly moved away again in order to glance out the window above them. The sky was still dark, except for the slightest hint of gold streaks that ever so gently lit the glass panes. She had awakened right at the crack of dawn. With a hum, she stayed in bed for some time, attempting to close her eyes and fall back asleep, and yet, the faint memories of her nightmare threatened to take hold of her each and every time she began to drift. Realizing trying to sleep was a fruitless endeavor, she carefully, and sadly, slid out of Link's grasp as he continued sleeping. Rising from the sheets, she swung her legs over and stood, turning back to peek at Link's sleeping face again. She smiled. It was rare for her to catch him sleeping.
You always manage to wake up before me these days. Always preparing whatever training lesson it is you have for me.
It was then her smile faltered before turning into a frown.
Lessons I put to waste last night.
Her chest grew heavy as she remembered the night before, the skeletons that had surrounded her, their bony hands clawing and grabbing her legs, while the giant behind them prepared to smash her into the ground. She shuddered and wrapped her arms around her torso as she remembered the fear that coursed through her then. But that wasn't the worst of it. No, what bothered her the most were the mistakes she had made that put her in that position. Her trembling hands that made her unable to aim her arrow, the throwing of her weapon that left her unarmed, and even the assumption she was safe after the beast had been knocked down the first time. It was simple. She had failed. Suddenly, she couldn't bear to look at Link's face, remembering how he had come to her rescue before she could be crushed.
I never left.
Her chest suddenly felt constricted again, the way it did after they'd returned home from the plateau. She needed air. Rubbing her hands against her upper arms, she quietly walked across the loft without bothering to grab her boots, stopping only to pull a spare cloak out from the dresser against the wall. Wrapping the cloak around her shoulders, she continued down the stairs and headed to the front door, only to stop the moment she pulled it open. She stared at the grass waving slightly in the breeze, still dark in the new dawn. Would those skeletons come again? Sure, it was early now, and the sun was starting to shine, even if just a little, but was there still a slight possibility that they would rise from the ground and assault her? Zelda's grip on the cloak around her shoulders tightened. Even with all of the shame and embarrassment she'd felt from the night before, was she still going to let her fear guide her actions? Taking a deep, almost aggressive breath, she practically stomped out the doorway, her bare feet crushing the blades of grass beneath them. She stood in place for a moment, waiting for the skeletons to start rising from the ground, and yet, nothing happened. The grass around her feet continued to sway, the light continuing to grow brighter as dawn replaced the night. After sighing, Zelda breathed in, allowing the cool mountain air to fill her lungs before exhaling. Feeling slightly calmer than before, she glanced over at the fields, taking note of the apple tree that no longer had apples on its branches, picked clean by her own hands. Almost absent-mindedly, she walked around the house, trying to walk as quietly as possible to not startle the sleeping mare in her stall, before stopping at the apple tree's trunk. Gently, she reached out and placed her palm on the bark as her frown deepened.
You're up early.
With a slight gasp, Zelda turned around to see Link walking toward her, a small but warm smile on his lips.
Good morning.
Yes. Good morning, Link.
Though she had returned his greeting, she turned away from him.
Are you alright? I hope you aren't beating yourself up over what happened last night.
You don't need to cushion your words. I know what you're about to tell me. I failed your trial, horrendously so, and you expected it, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. To some extent. I'm sorry.
There's no reason to apologize. Your judgment was correct.
With her back still turned to him, she sniffed, trying to contain herself. Taking her hand off the tree's trunk, she wiped her fingers against her shirt before wiping her eyes.
I'm not ready. I'm not built for the wilderness of this era.
Zelda.
You were right, Link. You were right all along. I didn't understand, choosing to remain naive and ignorant just so I could...
She stopped herself before she could finish, deciding it best to leave her reasoning out. Carefully, Link stepped closer to her.
Can you tell me what happened?
What is there to tell? You saw everything unfold, didn't you?
Only until you turned in for the night. What happened inside, I didn't see until I ran in.
And I should be grateful. Even remembering what I had done is shameful.
Link didn't respond, simply waiting quietly for her to continue. Eventually, Zelda sighed.
I woke up to that large beast roaming around outside, and the moment I saw it, I froze. When I finally managed to move, I couldn't control my fear and fumbled about with my gear. The beast heard me. It tried to reach through the cabin's walls to get me, only for it to realize there was an open doorway. I couldn't steady my bow and went for my sword, but I couldn't move my legs properly. In fear, I threw it, and it worked for a moment,
But you didn't finish it.
Zelda nodded.
I'm sure you can piece together what happened next. I don't understand what happened. The day had gone so well.
You were too at ease. Being on the plateau wasn't supposed to be a simple camping trip. It was a test of survival, and how you would manage on your own in tense situations where monsters could surround you at any given moment.
I see. So I was a fool after all.
That's not what I'm saying.
You're right. It isn't what you're saying, it's what I'm saying. You're kind, Link, but I can see the truth for myself, and so can you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have stayed on the plateau ready to save me. Right?
Link didn't answer, but Zelda didn't need him to.
Maybe it's for the best if I remain here. At least until you clear out most of the monsters. Just like you suggested a month ago. Clearly, I'm unfit to be out there with you.
She finally turned around to face Link, but her eyes were on the grass, unable to meet his.
I apologize for having to place the burden on you again. I know it's what you recommended, and I still don't like it. However, I don't see another solution. I should have listened to you before. Had I taken your words to heart, you might have already cleared out much of Hyrule's dangers. Training me was a waste of time, a delay caused by my selfishness.
Again, Link didn't respond, apparently taking in everything she was saying. This was what she expected, because honestly, what was there for him to say? He wasn't going to berate her, nor would he outwardly show that he was happy she was staying, or even agree that she had been foolish in her actions and decisions. As she said before, he was far too kind for that. So without need of answer, Zelda slightly bowed in apology before raising everything but her chin. Clearing her throat, she began to walk toward the house.
I'll help you prepare for your journey. You shouldn't waste any more time here, especially with the Shaker Slate showing you where to go. The divine beasts need to be inspected, and it needs to be as soon as possible. Who knows what awaits you? So if you would prepare breakfast, I'll get your gear in order.
Wait.
Link had called just as Zelda began walking past him. She heard the crunching of grass beneath his feet, a sign he had turned to face her, but she couldn't bring herself to turn back to him again. It had been hard enough the first time.
You can't do this, Zelda.
I don't understand.
You can't stay here while I go out there.
Forcing herself to raise her chin, Zelda turned around and finally met Link's eyes, guilt overflowing behind his irises.
Link, please, you know this is for the best. Don't let guilt cloud your judgment now, not when I've finally accepted the truth.
That's the thing. You're not accepting the truth. You got scared last night, and now that fear is influencing you. Don't let it win.
It did win, Link. I was frozen. I could barely move my legs. Had you actually left me on my own, I would have been crushed to death by a skeleton and who knows what else. I'm not a warrior. I'm not a swordsman, an archer, or anything of the sort. I had my sealing powers, and that is now gone as well. On the road, in this era, I would be nothing more than a hindrance.
No, you wouldn't be. You got scared. It was your first time confronting the wilderness alone. Of course, you wouldn't be perfect.
I would have died, Link. That's what you've been saying, right? That one hit from these monsters could be fatal.
And I'm right, it could be. But you shouldn't live your life fearful of that alone.
You can't say that. You aren't afraid. You've never frozen. You've...
I am afraid. Just not of monsters.
When Zelda stared, her eyes filled with confusion. It was Link's turn to avert his eyes as he brought a hand up to the back of his head.
I'm afraid of you getting hurt.
It was the first answer that came to mind, one given almost out of habit, but after another pause, he sighed.
No, that's not it. I mean, it is, but what I'm actually afraid of is losing you.
Losing me?
Though she wanted to ask about that specifically, she furrowed her brow and forced herself to stick to more pressing matters.
But if I stayed, you wouldn't lose me at all.
Yeah, I would. Because you should be out there and not stuck here.
Wait, Link. This is far too quick of a turnaround for you. This is what you wanted, and now I agree. I should stay.
No, you should be out there in the world, doing your research, helping me, and being free. I wanted you to stay because I was scared for you. But watching you make the choice yourself to stay like this...
He furrowed his brow before forcing himself to look her in the eye again.
I may as well be losing Zelda regardless. That's how I let my fear guide me, and it was a mistake.
Link, I really don't think I should.
I do, and honestly, I think you will too. I just can't help but feel if you stay and I go, you'll regret it. I think you should try again.
Again? I just failed, did I not? I can't try again so quickly afterward.
Then take a day, or 2, or 3, or however many you need. Think about what happened last night. Prepare yourself, adjust, and then try again. This time, not to show me, but to show yourself that you can do this.
As if able to feel the weight of his words, Zelda brought her free hand up to her chest.
Link, I'm not sure. This is such a drastic change from what you were saying before.
It is, but I should have encouraged you like this from the beginning. Seeing you like this, it made me realize what I was doing, or I guess what I haven't been doing. So I'm going to fix that now.
With a confident look, he stepped forward.
Try again, Zelda.
Zelda stared into Link's unwavering eyes. He was serious. He truly wanted her to try again. She looked down at her feet again before glancing out toward the cliffside, watching as the mountains beyond brightened in the rising sun. Finally, she shakily nodded.
Okay. I'll try again. I'll most certainly need a few days, but I will.
Upon hearing Zelda's answer, Link took a deep breath and gave her an uneasy smile.
Good.
You don't seem so confident in your own decision.
I can be confident and nervous at the same time, can't I? But I do believe in you. Though I also think you're right and should take a few days to prepare. Maybe about a week. Definitely a week.
Excuse me, but hearing this is not helping with my own nerves.
Zelda said this, but she couldn't hold back her own nervous giggle.
Well, do you think breakfast will help?
It might. It depends on how well you make it.
Oh, really?
Link snorted in teasing disbelief as he began walking toward the house, with Zelda at his side.
I'd like to see you do better.
In response, Zelda slightly shoved him, though her smile remained.
Thank you, Link. I'll make sure I succeed next time.
I know you will. You're strong, Zelda.
I hope you're right. I really do. Link, what are you looking at?
She had caught Link staring up at the house, his face stoic and his eyes strong. It was as if he were looking at something in particular, but when Zelda followed his gaze, all she saw was the window to the loft.
Nothing.
Coming to a stop at the door, he shook his head now that the window was out of view.
Just a habit is all.
I see. Speaking of habits, I see you don't have the Master Sword with you. That's quite rare.
I came to find you the moment I woke up.
Grabbing the handle, he opened the door for her.
Nothing more to it.
I see.
Though she knew he was lying, she said nothing more, deciding to focus her attention on what to prepare for when the time came to attempt her trial again. A week had passed since Zelda's night on the Great Plateau, and things had been fairly quiet since. After 2 days of rest to calm her nerves, specifically waiting until her heart felt normal and her hands wouldn't shake, Zelda continued her own form of training sessions over the remaining days. Link would find her outside early in the mornings, doing the sword drills he had taught her before practicing her aim with her bow. He could see a sheen of sweat on her forehead already present at the beginning of her swings and shots, a sign she had even continued doing her early jogs. Though, despite the fact she had regained the energy to train, she was still strangely quiet. Her afternoons and evenings were spent lost in whatever studies she chose to indulge in, or she would open up her diary to attempt writing, or maybe even her father's journals to read. At times, she would sit at the writing table in the loft with a quill in hand, yet few words would ever be put down. Other times, she would carry her books down to the dining room table, only for them to remain open on a random page while she stared at the weapons displayed on the walls surrounding her. Though Link wanted to help more, all he could do was keep her company in silence, giving her the support he believed she needed in his presence. Some days he would sit in the chair next to her at the table while working on wooden crafts, or bringing her food to ensure she was eating properly. It would always be small gestures, ones that wouldn't make her feel as though he was pressuring her to reattempt her wilderness trial too soon. The choice for when she would try again was up to her and her alone. Finally, by the end of the 7th day, just as the sun had begun its descent behind the mountain range, it seemed as though Zelda had finally made her decision. While the sun began to rise and brighten the mountains of Lanayru, Link was already breathing in the fresh morning air, stretching his body before heading over to let Epona out of her stall. As the mare stepped out and into the grass, grateful for the chance to spread her legs, her owner held out a breakfast apple for her to eat. Closing his eyes, Link listened to the crunching of the apple echoing in his ears, only for them to twitch when he heard the sound of the house's front door opening, followed shortly by Zelda's voice.
Link.
Turning, he saw her standing behind him, dressed in one of her Hylian tunics. With his usual stoicism, he gave Epona a light tap on the side, a sign she was free to roam, leaving the two of them in front of the stable alone.
Are you sure? Don't feel forced. You don't have to do this yet if you aren't ready.
I'm positive. I appreciate your concern and the care you've shown me this past week. I've noticed, and I am grateful truly. But we can't linger, not when the divine beasts are calling. I need to do this now.
After taking a moment to look Zelda in the eye, Link gave a single nod.
If you're sure, then okay. Get your gear ready, and after breakfast, we'll head out.
It was only a few hours later when the two of them found themselves standing on the cliff outside of the Shrine of Resurrection, looking out into the forests of the Great Plateau just as they had a week ago.
Are you sure about this? You really want to do this today?
When Zelda silently nodded, he swallowed but continued.
Then it's the same as last time. Anywhere is free for you to go, just don't stay here at the shrine. And, don't fall off the plateau.
Again, Zelda nodded. She hadn't looked at him once since they arrived on the cliff, simply choosing to stare out over the plateau's surface.
Well, I'll leave you to it. I'll be back tomorrow morning.
Link.
She still hadn't turned back to him, but her tone made Link instantly stop in his tracks. It wasn't loud, nor was it soft. If anything, it was air, as if her mind was elsewhere, and yet the single call somehow carried weight, and it was a heft Link could sense.
Can you promise me something?
And what would that something be?
Finally, Zelda turned and looked at him, her eyes firm as she met his own.
You must properly leave the plateau this time. No watching from afar like you did previously. Promise me you will leave and go home.
Zelda,
Link hesitated, causing Zelda's brow to slightly furrow.
How will you be able to properly assess me if in the back of my mind I know you're still around waiting to save me at a moment's notice? It was one thing for you to do so while I was unaware of your presence, but it's different now. You must promise me.
Link frowned, averting his eyes to look out over the plateau before glancing up at the clouds. Accepting he wouldn't be able to meet her eyes again, he decided to close them.
how will you know if I actually left? What makes you so sure I won't stick around regardless of what I say to you?
Because I trust you.
Her words forced his eyes to open and meet hers again, noticing she had closed the distance between them. Reaching out, she took one of his hands into both of her own.
The same way you trust me not to camp out here at the Shrine of Resurrection, I trust that you'll leave me here alone on the plateau properly. Give me the chance to prove to you that I am worthy of traveling by your side in this era, and to prove to myself that I am as well.
She gripped his hand a little tighter than before.
Besides, you forget I know you, and I know you well. I would know if you were lying.
Closing her eyes, she lowered her head.
Please, swear to me that you'll do as I ask.
While Link was unable to keep his eyes on her just a second ago, now they were glued to the top of her head, her golden hair shining in the morning sunlight. Here was the Princess of Hyrule, pleading with him, asking for him to put his faith in her. It was a true test of his trust, and while his emotions wanted to stay silent and keep her uncertain so he wouldn't break any promises to her, with a swallow, he nodded.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I promise.
Thank you.
Her head remained lowered, and her grip remained strong for a few moments longer before finally releasing him.
All right, I'll be off then.
Yeah. Good luck, Zelda.
That was all he could manage to say. With a smile, Zelda took a few steps backwards, keeping her eyes locked on him until she finally turned on her heel and began walking down the mountain's natural path. For a while, Link simply watched as she traveled down and eventually passed by the old man's old campsite. The urge to stay, to blatantly lie and tell her in the morning that he had left her alone all day and night, was strong. He could hide, even if she were keeping an eye out for him this time. He was confident she would never spot him if he actually tried. She would be safe, regardless of if she failed or succeeded. But despite his urge, he reached down and took the Sheikah slate off his hip. He was sure she was right. She would probably be able to easily tell if he were lying. At least, it wasn't something he was willing to put to the test. Yet. Glancing one more time at Zelda's retreating figure, he exhaled nervously before opening the slate's map and tapping on the blue icon closest to Hateno village, and in a river of blue lights, he vanished from the cliffside. Little did he know that Zelda had come to a stop and looked back just in time to see the remaining strings of light flying up into the sky.
He truly left. At least, I hope.
Immediately, Zelda felt her hand start to shake as her nerves began to flood her spirit, but using her other hand, she clasped it over the back and forced it still. She had to do this, not just for herself, but potentially everyone remaining in her forgotten kingdom. The divine beast's calls had to be linked to the malice and monsters remaining in Hyrule. There was no doubt in her mind about that. She had to go with Link as soon as possible to discover what secrets the ancient technology was trying to show them, and she had to keep her nerve while doing so. Taking a deep breath, she surveyed her surroundings. Last time, she took her trial and situation as a whole far too lightly, trying to live as luxuriously as possible in order to prove a point. It was a foolish decision, something a child would do, and she would act as such no more. She needed to account for everything, to find the absolute safest place to camp out for the night, where no monsters could reach her, and she had until nightfall to figure it out. The door to the cliffside house opened, and Link stepped inside, but after it closed, all he did was stand in the center of the room. He was there in their home, while Zelda was out on the Great Plateau by herself. Alone. Repeatedly snapping his fingers, he moved and sat down at the kitchen table, where a few of Zelda's books remained stacked on top of each other. One of them remained open, its pages waiting to be read in front of the empty chair Zelda had been occupying for the past week. Link recognized it as her father's journal, the one he'd kept during his time on the plateau. Reaching forward, he took the open book and pulled it closer to him in order to read a few lines.
Defeat Calamity Ganon, and save my precious daughter Zelda. I believe in you, Link.
Immediately, Link stood and turned to head back toward the front door. He couldn't do it. He needed to go back to the plateau to watch over her. If she were to falter just like she had before...
Master, I advise you to wait.
Why?
Link stopped and glanced at the sword on his back, unsurprised to see its winged hilt faintly glowing.
Why shouldn't I go? And why do you only choose to speak up when you want to stop me from doing my job? I thought my job as the hero meant keeping her safe. Isn't that what you were created by the goddess for?
I was created for the sole purpose of sealing and keeping the ancient evil at bay.
As the sword began to explain, the aura surrounding it slowly pulsated as it spoke.
The task you were given by her grace, the goddess Hylia, is not to strictly protect her descendants, but to succeed in defeating the evil that continues to plague her lands, in order to protect her citizens. Protecting the one you call Zelda, the one with the goddess's blood, is nothing more than happenstance.
What? But
I was not forged to protect the goddess, or those in her bloodline. I was created to honor her wish, to defeat the ancient evil and protect her people. Depending on the circumstance, protecting the one with the blood of the goddess happens to be a necessity to fulfill the goddess's wish. Your task from her grace is similar.
Link gritted his teeth. In his heart of hearts, he knew that was the sword's purpose, even his purpose. The task given to him by King Rhoam over a century ago was an order by that of the king, not the goddess. It was just as Impa had said. The sword does not act on the will of the royal family, but the will of the goddess and its own judgment. Regardless, he reached for the handle and pulled the door open.
maybe that's all there is to your purpose. And maybe my task is to simply seal the calamity. But that's over. Ganon is sealed. So my duty is elsewhere now.
Your duty is not over, and neither is Zelda's. By your own admissions.
This made Link stop in his tracks, with one foot out of the door.
You have both come to the conclusion that something is wrong. A conclusion I sense is correct. Malice still affects the land, adding to the probability the seal wasn't 100% effective, or the possibility of something else beyond my knowledge. none of this is new information for you.
It's not. And all of that should tell you why I need to be there to make sure Zelda is safe. Everything you just said proves that me going back aligns with your given task. So why are you stopping me?
While I was given a specific task by Her Grace, it is not my sole purpose for existing. Not anymore. Ever since my first master, I have learned to create my own tasks, ones to benefit my main task, and my master's personal tasks as well. It is my belief that going to oversee Zelda's progress would hinder the trial's effectiveness greatly.
Guiltily, Link's body relaxed, and with a sigh, he pressed his forehead against the open door's wood as he held it in place by the handle.
While I have learned what immense value having such strong emotions hold, I advise you don't give them 100% control over your decisions. You have honed your skills and become extremely effective at using them. Her Grace, your Zelda, must also be given the chance to hone her own. This immensely raises her chances of survival in the wilderness, alongside your effectiveness at discovering what mysteries lie ahead. I advise that you do well to remember this, Master Link.
The Master Sword's aura vanished, and its voice could be heard no more. Exhaling slowly, Link lifted his head and looked back at it one more time before stepping back into the house. Closing the door behind him, he turned and pressed his back to its surface and folded his arms. He had to do this. As much as it bothered him, the sword was right, and was eager enough to ensure its point was made by speaking, even going as far as to throw the entire reasoning of the trial back in his face, a goal he himself had created. Doing his best to accept this was what had to happen, he brought up his hands and pushed his bangs back, resting the back of his head against the door.
She did it all during the day last time, so right now, she should be fine. She is fine.
It was still morning, and he was already like this. How would he be when the moon came out? That was something he would worry about when the time came. At that moment, he had to keep himself from heading back to the plateau right then and there. For the rest of the day, he tried to remain active and keep busy. By late morning, he had already taken Epona out to the forest to collect more firewood for the cooking pot and other necessities. By noon, he had already collected enough food to last them a few weeks, and later that afternoon, the food had already been cooked. Finally, by the time the sun was setting, his gear had already been cleaned and prepared for their travels, many of them having been laid on the dining table while he counted them. He needed to make sure he had enough weapons and arrows for both him and Zelda for when they began their journey. Zelda. With a hum, he glanced outside, noticing the golden glow of the sky. His finger began to tap against the wood of the table. It was about to start. Her true test, and he needed to remain home, to trust that she would be okay on her own. It was a single night, one she had already experienced before. Zelda was capable. She had to have learned. She didn't seem too eager to rush right back into the challenge, meaning she wouldn't have decided today was the day to attempt again if she didn't think she was truly prepared. Still, his finger continued to tap and eventually he stood. He needed to find a way to keep himself here, or rather, away from the plateau. With that goal in mind, he left the weapons on the table and quickly headed back out the door. Bringing his fingers to his lips, he blew a loud whistle, calling Epona back from the small field next to the house she was grazing in. Before she could even come to a complete stop, Link had already climbed on the saddle and guided her to the wooden bridge and toward Hateno village. From there, he continued to ride, passing by houses and shops, windmills and pastures, until eventually, he was riding up the mountain toward the lighthouse at the top. After pulling Epona to a stop and climbing out of the saddle, he stepped toward the painted doors and knocked. Without waiting for an answer, he pushed them open, revealing the tech lab's mess of an interior, where a little girl and her much larger assistant were still up and working.
Why bother knocking if you're going to just barge in anyway?
The lab's little director, who was currently standing on a stool and bending over the center table as she scribbled away in a large notebook, had called out to him as he closed the door behind him.
Honestly, I'd rather you just continue to barge in unannounced, instead of pretending you're going to give us a moment to prepare for guests.
Link chuckled as he stepped away from the door, returning Symin's nod in greeting with a nod of his own. Accepting the greeting, the assistant turned back to the book he was reading, while Link came to a stop near the little girl.
Would you have actually prepared if I had waited?
Of course not, but the gesture would have been appreciated regardless. Anyhow, what can I do for you, Linky? You're visiting quite late. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, sorry for coming so late, but I actually have a favor to ask.
When Purah grunted in response while flipping back to a previous page in her notebook to reference something, he brought a hand up to the back of his neck.
I need you to keep me here for the night.
Without looking up, Purah flipped back to her original page in order to keep writing.
I'm not one for babysitting. Did you and Zelda get into a fight? Don't tell me you actually convinced yourself it was best to try and keep her here.
Zelda isn't here. She's on the Great Plateau.
At this, Purah stopped writing, and Symin looked up from his book to stare at him.
She's on the Great Plateau? Now? Alone? But, Link, the moon will be fully out in just a few minutes.
Yeah, I know.
Bringing his hand down from his neck, Link took a seat at Purah's table.
That's sort of the point right now.
But, Link, that's the princess of...
Before Symin could continue, Purah raised one of her small hands.
Explain.
And explain he did, from the day before her first attempt at his test to the moment he left her on the plateau. The conversation he had with his sword, however, he chose to keep to himself. Once finished, Purah hummed before jumping down from her stool.
Would you like some tea? It sounds like you've got a long night ahead of you.
Sure, thanks. I'm hoping Zelda's night is easier.
We're really going to go through with this? To test the princess's survival capabilities on her own with such an aggressive method?
This is exactly what the goal was, Symin.
Purah answered while she opened a cabinet near the cooking furnace in the corner of the large room.
We've been saying she needs to learn, and Linky is right. The plateau is known to be one of the safer places. Besides, it sounds as though Zelda did well on her first attempt, so it would only be logical to conclude she would do better this time around. It should be a snap for her if she took anything away from her first try.
Symin hummed nervously, but thought it best not to argue. Zelda was already out there, and now that Purah was supporting the decision, all he could do was accept it and hope for the best. It was a sentiment Link understood well, and it was one he questioned even after accepting his tea and committing to staying at the tech lab for the night.
Linky? Linky! Wake up, Linky!
With a snort, Link jolted, his head snapping up. His cheek and arms felt numb, his back cracked as he straightened himself, and his vision blurred at the light. With a yawn, he began to rub his eyes, allowing for the brightened interior of the tech lab to become clear.
What happened?
He wiped a bit of drool from the corner of his mouth.
What time is it?
You fell asleep halfway through the night.
She was standing in the same spot on the stool as she had been the night before, but instead of having a large book in front of her, the table was covered in various types of ancient parts consisting of gears, screws, and other pieces. With her technological goggles on instead of her glasses, she picked up one piece after another, as if inspecting each one's quality.
As for the time, it's only an hour or two past daybreak.
She swapped through pieces quickly, the mechanical eyes of her goggles moving strangely independent of one another.
I don't believe Symin is even awake yet.
An hour or two after daybreak.
Link asked as he stretched his back in the chair, the cracks of his spine echoing around the large room. Sighing as he relaxed his body, he glanced out one of the windows to admire the beautiful blend of blue and orange of the sky outside, until suddenly, he stood so fast his chair almost fell to the ground.
It's morning?
That's what I said.
He had fallen asleep? While Zelda was out in the wild fending for herself? And soundly for that matter. How? Had the tea put him to sleep? Was Purah talking about her research so boring it caused him to nod off? Did she do that on purpose?
I think it's about time you went to check on Zelda.
It is.
Panicked, he patted his waist.
Purah, where's the Sheikah slate?
Right there.
The researcher pointed toward one of the ancient devices on the table. There, sitting amidst the mess, was the slate.
I also took some of your ancient parts as payment for letting you sleep here.
Yeah, fine. Go ahead, whatever you need.
Link quickly snatched the slate off the table.
Thanks again, Purah. I'll see you later.
He barely saw Purah gesture to him in response, without looking away from her work, of course, while he quickly tapped on the screen, slid to the map, and pressed on the blue Great Plateau Tower icon. The feeling in his body and the sight of the tech lab's interior vanished as his matter turned into light, and he waited anxiously for his body to reform. Once it did, he was again blinded by the morning light, needing to rub his eyes and blink a few times before his vision returned, revealing the ancient tower's floor and tall view of the Great Plateau. Immediately upon forming, he started tapping the slate screen again as he hurried toward the tower's ledge.
Fine, Zelda. The first place I should check is her father's cabin. She probably hauled herself in there and defended herself when the skeletons came out. Hopefully she's okay.
Before he could finish, he felt something hard hit the toe of his boot, causing him to stumble. Regaining his balance before he could fall completely, he turned to see what he had tripped over and found a traveler's sword laying on the ground next to one of the tower's support pillars. The sword wasn't the only thing he saw. There, sitting on the ground with her back against the pillar's surface and her arms wrapped tightly around her bow, was a sleeping Zelda.
Zelda.
Upon the sight of her, Link heaved a great sigh of relief. Placing the Sheikah slate back onto his hip, he stepped closer and crouched down to her level. She didn't stir, her eyes remained closed and her breathing deep. It was honestly surprising to see she had managed to keep such a tight grip on her bow while sleeping, a habit Link himself had mastered. With how peaceful she was sleeping, he didn't want to wake her, but seeing as this was something he would do himself, he knew that position couldn't have been very comfortable, so he gently raised a hand and brushed the back of his finger against her cheek.
Zelda. Hey, it's time to get up.
Zelda groaned, her head rolling from one side to another at his touch. Slowly, her eyes began to open before she suddenly jerked up with a gasp, her bow toppling from her arms. She scrambled to her knees to pick up her bow, only to be stopped by Link's grip on both her shoulders.
Hey, easy. It's me. You're safe.
Link!
Zelda asked in surprise, meeting his eyes, as if realizing it wasn't a dream, that he was real and he was really in front of her. She closed her eyes and exhaled, the tension in her body vanishing.
Link!
Leaning into him, she placed her face in the crook of his neck.
I'm here. I came to find you as soon as I woke up. Thankfully, I didn't need to look very far.
Lifting his head, he looked around the tower.
Camping out on the tower, huh?
He felt Zelda nod in answer, remaining in the crook of his neck.
You said not to camp at the Shrine of Resurrection. Everything else was free for me to explore. That included the tower, did it not?
It did, and it was a smart choice. No monsters can get you up here. It's a perfect place to survive the night in a worst-case scenario. If you have the strength to climb all the way up here, that is.
Well, it's a good thing I do now.
Pulling away slightly, she looked up with a small smile.
All thanks to your training.
When did you choose to climb up here?
Well before the sun went down. I didn't wish to try my luck facing one of those skeletons again. One day I might have to, but well, your test wasn't about fighting, right? So after finding whatever scraps of food I could, I came right up here.
Really?
Link hummed thoughtfully as a smile crept across his face. Zelda raised an eyebrow, her smile growing a little wider.
You sound surprised. Does that mean you truly left me alone out here like I requested?
I did. You can ask Purah if you want proof. I asked her to keep me at the tech lab all night. She offered me tea and everything.
Oh, really now? Sounds like you had a fun night without me.
Fun isn't exactly what I'd call it. The chair I slept in wasn't all that comfortable.
I don't want to hear that after sleeping against this stone pillar. So, what say you? Have I passed your test?
Have you passed my test, you ask?
After a pause, he gave a single nod.
I think it'd be unfair if I said you didn't, don't you think?
You could simply say yes, but if you truly mean that, then that means it's time we began our journey.
Whoa, slow down there. Yes, you passed, but you only just passed.
Link, don't tell me you have something else in store for me.
Link simply shook his head.
No, I don't. Unless you count breakfast and the few days of rest I feel like you should take. You need to rest mentally and physically. Training was hard. This challenge was hard, even if you succeeded this time around. Let's take a few days to rest and prepare. And after that, then we can figure out where we'll head to first. How does that sound?
I suppose that's a good idea.
Though she teased, she calmly rested her cheek on his shoulder.
I demand a big breakfast this morning. The apples I ate last night were most certainly not enough.
Then a big breakfast it is.
Gently, Link placed a hand on her back. With a deep breath, he looked out into the fields beyond the plateau's walls, where the distant mountains and castles' shadows played in the rays of the morning sun as it continued to rise.
You did well, Zelda. You did well.
So, do you plan to just sit there all night?
Truthfully, I'm not sure what else I can offer. If you want help with this sort of thing, you'd be better off asking Zelda when she gets back from the plateau.
Though Link had attempted to keep his tone lighthearted, Purah could vaguely hear the nerves behind the facade. Without stopping her pen, she glanced over, noticing Link looking out the window, his eyes lost in thought as they watched the moon outside continue to rise higher into the darkness of the night sky. Rolling her eyes, she closed her notebook.
Well, if you're gonna be here, you might as well make yourself useful in some capacity.
Link raised his eyebrow, turning his attention away from the window and back to the little researcher.
But how? Purah, really, I don't think I can help much with this.
Snap!
Purah snapped her fingers, silencing her guest.
Symin, bring over that box of spare parts we have. We might as well take the time to go through and do an inventory count.
From across the room, Symin nodded and closed the book he had been reading. Placing it back on the shelf, he walked to another corner of the lab and took a large crate in hand. After bringing it over to Purah's side at the table, he awaited his next order.
Just pour it out. Right onto the table if you would.
Sighing, Symin did as he was told, dumping the parts with a clatter. Pleased with his work, Purah waved him away. As the assistant returned to find the book he had placed on the shelf, the director gestured to the table.
I need to inspect each and every one of these parts to assess whether they're in proper condition or not.
Okay, and you want me to...
Sit there and listen. If you're just going to sit and do nothing, then at least stare at these objects and humor me. It's been some time since I've been able to give a thorough explanation to someone who isn't Symin. Make this little girl happy, won't ya?
I mean, if that's all you want, sure, I can listen.
Purah grinned mischievously.
Perfect! Then let's start with this little guy here.
The first item she grabbed from the table was a screw.
This is an ancient screw. It's a screw used in ancient machinery. It's a spring used in ancient machinery. It is a light especially in incredibly old. It's belt quality machinery. It's incredibly sturdy, and it's not made of any recognizable material.
It wasn't long before Link's head had lowered and his eyes had closed. Purah rolled her eyes.
And just as expected, he fell asleep in a snap.
Shaking her head, she raised her little hand and swapped her glasses out for the large technological goggles that had been resting against her silver hair bun.
The only person who was able to talk his ear off about Guardian technology 100 years ago was Zelda herself. It seems some things never change.